The very first service that we'll take a look at in AWS is the Identity and Access Management Service, or commonly known as IAM. And IAM is a core service within AWS. It allows organizations to create users and set up groups and control the security policies which are used to access various AWS resources. You can use IAM to set up very granular access controls for most any service within AWS. You can use it to also set up federated access to your environment. So for example, if you want to connect via your corporate Active Directory system, or even leverage some third-party login to access AWS, you can set up that federation using IAM. Additionally, you can use IAM to control things like the password expiration and strength. You can use it to restrict access to particular services. It's really common to have different access levels within your organization, or different roles. For example, you might have someone that has an administrative role within your AWS account, and they're able to exercise most of the functionality within AWS. And then you might have other people. Maybe they are sort of like application developers, and they don't have the ability to create new users or create new roles, but they have the ability to spin up EC2 instances or access objects in S3 buckets. So you can set up all these sort of different access privileges using identity and access management. One thing to keep in mind is that identity and access management is a service which applies to all regions within AWS. It's what we call a global service. You'll find that most of the other services that we look at in this course are region specific. So for example, when we look at S3 buckets or EC2 instances, you'll find that when you create an EC2 instance, you create it within a particular region of the world. Identity and access management doesn't work that way. Identity and access management is truly global. It works across all regions within your AWS account. One thing I also wanted to note is that when you signed up for AWS, you provided an account and a password to sign into your AWS account. The account that you created when you signed up for AWS is called your root account. And the root account is the most powerful account, the most powerful user within your AWS account. The root account can be used to do just about everything. It can be used to look at billing information and create new services and so on. Generally, that's not the best account to use on a day-to-day basis. Like in practice, when we create a new AWS account, it's got a root user, but once we create the account, we'll take the root user credentials and we'll sort of like lock those up, and we'll only pull them out when absolutely necessary. But on a day-to-day basis, we'll use less powerful accounts for managing our AWS resources. Before we look at how IAM works, there are a handful of terms that you need to know. First of all, within IAM, we have users. And users are accounts that people will log into to access and control resources within AWS. As I mentioned, when you created your AWS account, you started by creating a root user. You can go in and create additional users, not just for yourself, but for other team members, so that they can also access that same AWS account. A group is a set of users that share a similar set of access privileges. You might have a group of users for administrators, a group for your software developers, a group for your security people, and so on and so forth. A role is an access privilege, and a role is something that we can actually assign, in many cases, to AWS resources. You'll see a number of examples of how this works within AWS. The bottom line is that a role allows resources to act like users that have specific privileges. And that might not be real clear right now, but as we progress in this course, that will begin to make more sense. A policy is a document that describes the privileges that a user or role has. So a policy is a document that contains a policy language that specifies what is allowed and what is not allowed from a user or a role perspective.